Sai Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nityal Vishwamishwapad Ashtatashtamar Srila Bhakti Vigyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Nityal Vishwamishwapad Ashtatashtamar Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. Nityal Vishwa Mahabhagavat Srila Saraswati Maharaj ki jai. Nityal Vishwa Shri Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Nityal Vishwa Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Shri Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupa Nurgurya Guruvara ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhakti Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Padilashinath Sharda Sai Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sri Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gopal Shada Vrinda ki jai. Nama Jai Shri Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Vaja Mandala Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Sarva Abhishta Bharati Giriraj Maharaj ki jai. Shri Radha Kund Shama Kund ki jai. Shri Mona Devi Ganga Devi ki jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Nanda Devi ki jai. Shri Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Purnamasi Yoga Maya ki jai. Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev ki jai. Shri Vijaya Akarashi ki jai. Vijaya Akarashi Tithi Palan Kari Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Samagata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Nitai Gaura Premanande Hari Gaur. Dandavat pranams Indira Mataji. Back home. Okay, great. Alright. Hope you had a nice time in Bashana. Okay. Let's start. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjalakaya Chakshurmilitamyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Namo Vishnupadaya Radhikaya Priyatmane Shri Śrīmad-Bhakti Vedanta Narayaniti Namane. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Namo Mahabharanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratishe Namah. Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namah. Yam Prabrajantam Anupetam Apeta Krityam Dvaipayano Virahakatara Ajuhavo Putreti Tanmayataya Taravo Bhinedu Stam Sarvabhuta Hridaya Munimanatosmi. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Shrinvatam Sakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Redantasto Yabhadrani Vidhunoti Suritsatam. Nashta Prayeshva Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Tavai Vasmi Na Jivami Tvaya Vina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayamam Charanantikam. Bhakta Vina Aparadha Laksha Shiptashtakamaldi Tarangamadhi Kripa Maitam Sharanam Prapanna Vrinde Namaste Charanarvindam. Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we're finishing up the 29th chapter finally. It's a long chapter. And I'm not going to go into so much detail what we read, but just quickly. Devahuti, she asked 3 more questions. She asked for more details about Bhakti, the nature of, that was her 5th question, and the nature of time, that was her 6th question, and the cycle of birth and death. And then she glorifies Kapila. Then Kapila, he answers her 5th question, describing the various classes of Bhakti. So he explains the performers of Bhakti in the 3 modes, and then the characteristics of Bhakti beyond the 3 modes, and then the angas of Bhakti for the purification of the mind, and practice of these angas of Bhakti gives rise to pure Bhakti. Then offenses are obstacles in Bhakti and its solution. If one neglects or disregards me, present in all jivas, hates or criticizes others, his deity worship is imitation only, like oblations into ashes. And the solution is to perform duties and worship the deity until one realizes the presence of the Lord in all. And then we read about the gradations of jivas, starting from the inanimate objects to the pure devotee. And today we'll read about the best is the person who has no interest outside of the Lord. And then we'll read about the nature of time, which is the answer to this Devahuti's 6th question. Alright. And just what are the gradations of the jivas? Yesterday we read about inanimate objects. Then above that is the living immovable entities. Then entities with greater life symptoms, entities with developed consciousness, and then entities with sense perception. This is a subcategory. Okay, so all these 3 were inanimate objects. Now, entities with sense perception. So beings with touch sensation, beings with taste sensation, beings with the sense of smell, beings who can hear, beings who can distinguish forms, entities with 2 sets of teeth, beings with many legs, animals with 4 legs. And now the next subsection is humans with 2 legs. There are those who are non-varnashram humans and humans in varnashram. And then Brahmins. A Brahman who knows the Vedas. Brahmins who know the meaning of the Vedas. Brahmins who can dispel doubts. Brahman who also follows his duties. A liberated person, and then a pure devotee. That's what we read about yesterday. So now we'll continue from verse 33. Okay. Is this sound outside way too loud? It's almost over though, actually. They're just doing Mahamantra there, last kirtan. So. Tasman mayarpita shesha kriyatartatma nirantara mayarpitatmana pungso mai sanyasta karmana na pashyami param bhutam akartu samadarshanat. Just saying it's way too loud. No comments on that, so I think it's okay. So wait, let me just read from yesterday we read, better than the Brahman who knows the purpose of the Vedas is he who can dissipate all doubts, and better than him is one who strictly follows the Brahminical principles. Better than him is one who is liberated from all material contamination, and better than him is a pure devotee who executes devotional service without expectation of reward. And I just read the Sanskrit. Therefore, I do not find a greater person than he who has no interest outside of mine, and who therefore engages and dedicates all his activities and all his life, everything, unto me without cessation. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In this verse, the word sarmadashanat means that he no longer has any separate interest. The devotee's interest and the Supreme Personality of Godhead's interest are one. For example, Lord Chaitanya, in the role of a devotee, also preached the same philosophy. He preached that Krishna is the worshipful Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that the interest of his pure devotees is the same as his own. Sometimes Mayavadi philosophers, due to a poor fund of knowledge, define the word samardarshanat to mean that a devotee should see himself as one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is foolishness. When one thinks himself one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no question of serving him. When there is service, there must be a master. Three things must be present for there to be service: the master, the servant, and the service. Here it is clearly stated that he who has dedicated his life, all of his activities, his mind and his for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord is considered to be the greatest person. The word arkatu means without any sense of proprietorship. Everyone wants to act as the proprietor of his actions so that he can enjoy the result. A devotee, however, has no such desire. He acts because the personality of Godhead wants him to act in a particular way. He has no personal motive. When Lord Chaitanya preached Krishna consciousness, it was not with the purpose that people would call him Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rather, he preached that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and should be worshipped as such. A devotee who is a most confidential servant of the Lord never does anything for his personal account, but he does everything for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. It is clearly stated, therefore, Maya Sanyasta Karmana. The devotee works, but he works for the Supreme. It is also stated, Maya Arpitatmana. He gives his mind unto me. These are the qualifications of a devotee who, according to this verse, is accepted as the highest of all human beings. Manasaitani bhutani pranamir bahumanayam Ishvaro jiva kalaya pravishto bhagavaniti. Such a perfect devotee offers respects to every living entity because he is under the firm conviction that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has entered the body of every living entity as the supersoul or controller. Purport. A perfect devotee, as described above, does not make the mistake of thinking that because the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Paramatma has entered into the body of every living entity has become the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is foolishness. Suppose a person enters into a room. That does not mean that the room has become that person. Similarly, that the Supreme Lord has entered into each of the 8,400,000 particular types of material bodies does not mean that each of these bodies has become the Supreme Lord. Because the Supreme Lord is present, however, a pure devotee accepts each body as the temple of the Lord. And since the devotee offers respect to such temples in full knowledge, he gives respect to every living entity in relationship with the Lord. Mayavadi philosophers wrongly think that because the Supreme Person has entered the body of a poor man, the Supreme Lord has become Daridra Narayan, or poor Narayan. These are all blasphemous statements of atheists and non-devotees. Bhakti yogascha maya mana vyudirita yayoreka tarenaiva purusha purusham prajet. I like that point, though, of whenever we should see every living entity as being a temple, housing the... My dear mother, O daughter of Manu, a devotee who applies the science of devotional service and mystic yoga in this way can achieve the abode of the Supreme Person simply by that devotional service. Purport. Herein, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kapila perfectly explains that the mystic yoga system, consisting of 8 different kinds of yoga activities, has to be performed with the aim of coming to the perfectional stage of Bhakti Yoga. It is not acceptable for one to be satisfied simply by practicing the sitting postures and thinking himself complete. By meditation, one must attain the stage of devotional service. As previously described, a yogi is advised to meditate on the form of Lord Vishnu from point to point, from the ankles to the legs, to the knees, to the thighs, to the chest, to the neck, and in this way, gradually up to the face, and then to the ornaments. There is no question of impersonal meditation. When, by meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead in all detail, one comes to the point of love of God, that is the point of Bhakti Yoga, and at that point, he must actually render service to the Lord out of transcendental love. Anyone who practices yoga and comes to the point of devotional service can attain the Supreme Personality of Godhead and its transcendental abode. Here it is clearly stated, Purusha Purusham Vrajet. The Purush, the living entity, goes to the Supreme Person. The Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity are qualitatively one. Both are defined as Purush. The quality of Purush exists both in the Supreme Godhead and in the living entity. Purush means enjoyer, and the spirit of enjoyment is present both in the living entity and in the Supreme Lord. The difference is that the quantity of enjoyment is not equal. The living entity cannot experience the same quantity of enjoyment as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. An analogy may be made with a rich man and a poor man. The propensity for enjoyment is present in both, but the poor man cannot enjoy in the same quantity as the rich man. When the poor man dovetails his desires with those of the rich man, however, when there is cooperation between the poor man and the rich man, or between the big and the small man, then the enjoyment is shared equally. That is like Bhakti Yoga, Purusha Purusham Vrajet. When the living entity enters into the kingdom of God and cooperates with the Supreme Lord by giving him enjoyment, he enjoys the same facility or the same amount of pleasure as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. On the other hand, when a living entity wants to enjoy by imitating the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his desire is called Maya, and it puts him in the material atmosphere. A living entity who wants to enjoy on his personal account and not cooperate with the Supreme Lord is engaged in materialistic life. As soon as he dovetails his enjoyment with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is engaged in spiritual life. An example may be cited here. The different limbs of the body cannot enjoy independently. They must cooperate with the whole body and supply food to the stomach. In so doing, all the different parts of the body enjoy equally in cooperation with the whole body. That is the philosophy of Achinta Bheda Bhed, simultaneous oneness and difference. The living entity cannot enjoy life in opposition to the Supreme Lord. He has to dovetail his activities with the Lord by practicing Bhakti Yoga. It is said herein that one can approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead by either the yoga process or the Bhakti Yoga process. This indicates that factually there is no difference between yoga and Bhakti Yoga, because the target of both is Vishnu. In the modern age, however, a yoga process has been manufactured which aims at something void and impersonal. Actually, yoga means meditation on the form of Lord Vishnu. If the yoga practice is actually performed according to the standard direction, there is no difference between yoga and Bhakti Yoga. Etad Bhagavato Rupam Brahmana Paramatmana Param Pradhanam Purusham Daivam Karma Vicheshtitam. This Purusha, whom the individual soul must approach, is the eternal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is known as Brahman and Paramatma. He is the transcendental chief personality, and his activities are all spiritual. Purport. In order to distinguish the personality whom the individual soul must approach, it is described herein that this Purush, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the chief amongst all living entities and is the ultimate form of the impersonal Brahman effulgence and Paramatma manifestation. Since he is the origin of the Brahman effulgence and Paramatma manifestation, he is described herewith as the chief personality. It is confirmed in the Katha Upanishad, Nitya Nityanam. There are many eternal living entities, but he is the chief maintainer. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita also, where Lord Krishna says, Aham Sarvasva Prabhava. I am the origin of everything, including the Brahman effulgence and Paramatma manifestation. His activities are transcendental, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Janma karma chame devyam. Bhagavad Gita 4.9. The activities and the appearance and disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are transcendental. They are not to be considered material. Anyone who knows this fact, that the appearance, disappearance, and activities of the Lord are beyond material activities or material conception, is liberated. Yo veti tattvata, takta deham punarjanma. 4.9. Such a person, after quitting his body, does not come back again to this material world, but goes to the Supreme Person. It is confirmed here, Purusha Purushan Vrajet. The living entity goes to the Supreme Personality simply by understanding his transcendental nature and activities. Rupa Vedaspadam Devyam Kala Itya Vidhiyate Bhutanam Maharadinam Yata Bhinna Drisham Bhayam. The time factor, who causes the transformation of various material manifestations, is another feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sorry. Anyone who does not know that time is the same Supreme Personality is afraid of the time factor. Those who do not know that time is the same Supreme Personality is afraid of the time factor. Purport. Everyone is afraid of the activities of time, but a devotee who knows that the time factor is another representation or manifestation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead has nothing to fear from the influence of time. The phrase Rupa Bhedaspadam is very significant. By the influence of time, so many forms are changing. For example, when a child is born, his form is small, but in the course of time, that form changes into a larger form, the body of a boy, and then the body of a young man. Similarly, everything is changed and transformed by the time factor, or by the indirect control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Usually, we do not see any difference between the body of a child and the body of a boy or young man, because we know that these changes are due to the action of the time factor. There is cause for fear for a person who does not know how time acts. Yonta pravrisha bhutani bhuteratya kilashraya savishvakya diyagyoso kala kalayatam prabhu. Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the enjoyer of all sacrifices, is the time factor and the master of all masters. He enters everyone's heart. He is the support of everyone, and he causes every being to be annihilated by another. Purport. Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is clearly described in this passage. He is the supreme enjoyer, and all others are working as his servants. As stated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi 5.14, Ekale Ishvara Krishna, the only Supreme Lord is Vishnu. Ar Sababhritya, and all others are his servants. Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and other demigods are all servants. The same Vishnu enters everyone's heart as Paramatma, and he causes the annihilation of every being through another being. Na chasya kashidayito na deshyo na cha bandhava avishatya pramatoso pramatam janamantakrit. No one is dear to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, nor is anyone his enemy or friend. But he gives inspiration to those who have not forgotten him and destroys those who have. Purport. Forgetfulness of one's relationship with Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the cause of one's repeated birth and death. A living entity is as eternal as the Supreme Lord, but due to his forgetfulness, he is put into this material nature and transmigrates from one body to another. And when the body is destroyed, he thinks that he is also destroyed. Actually, this forgetfulness of his relationship with Lord Vishnu is the cause of his destruction. Anyone who revives his consciousness of the original relationship receives inspiration from the Lord. This does not mean that the Lord is someone's enemy and someone else's friend. He helps everyone. One who is not bewildered by the influence of material energy is saved, and one who is bewildered is destroyed. It is said, therefore, Harim vina nasritim taranti. No one can be saved from the repetition of birth and death without the help of the Supreme Lord. It is therefore the duty of all living entities to take shelter of the lotus feet of Vishnu and thus save themselves from the cycle of birth and death. Yarbhayarvativattoyam suryastapati yarbhayat yarbhayarvarshate devo bhagano bhati yarbhayat. Out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the wind blows. Out of fear of him, the sun shines. Out of fear of him, the rain pours forth showers. And out of fear of him, the hosts of heavenly bodies shed their luster. There's another part in Bhagavatam that we read that was like this also. And there's a song by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Sharanagati, which also has the same meaning. Purport. The Lord states in Bhagavad Gita, Maya Dhakshena Prakriti Suyate. Nature is working under my direction. The foolish person thinks that nature is working automatically, but such an atheistic theory is not supported in the Vedic literature. Nature is working under the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, and we also find here that the sun shines under the direction of the Lord, and the cloud pours forth showers of rain under the direction of the Lord. All natural phenomena are under the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. Yarvanaspatayo bhita latascho shadivisaha sve se kale bhigrinanti pushpani cha phalani cha. Out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the trees, creepers, herbs, and seasonal plants and flowers blossom and fructify, each in its own season. Purport. As the sun rises and sets, and the seasonal changes ensue at their appointed times by the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so the seasonal plants, flowers, herbs, and trees all grow under the direction of the Supreme Lord. It is not that plants grow automatically without any cause, as the atheistic philosophers say. Rather, they grow in pursuance of the supreme order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is confirmed in the Vedic literature that the Lord's diverse energies are working so nicely that it appears that everything is being done automatically. Shravanti sarito bhita notsarpatu daitiryata Agnirinde sagiri bin bhurnama jati arbhayat. Out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the rivers flow, and the ocean never overflows. Out of fear of him only does fire burn, and does the earth, with its mountains, not sink in the water of the universe. Yeah, the power went out and now it's back. So I'll just give a couple minutes for people to rejoin. Oh, I'm not gonna share my screen. Okay. Yes, reading Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is like an elixir, isn't it? Okay, I'm continuing on. Oh, we're almost finished also, 42, and we're only a few more verses. So, Shravanti Sarito Bhita Notsarpatu Tadiryata Agnirinde Sagiri Vir Bhurnamachati Ardhayat. Out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the rivers flow, and the ocean water never overflows. Out of fear of Him only does fire burn, and does the earth with its mountains not sink in the water of the universe. Purport. We can understand from the Vedic literature that this universe is half filled with water, on which Garbhodaksha Vishnu is lying. From his abdomen, a lotus flower has grown, and within the stem of that lotus flower, all the different planets exist. The material scientist explains that all these different planets are floating because of the law of gravity or some other law. But the actual lawmaker is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When we speak of law, we must understand that there must be a lawmaker. The material scientists can discover laws of nature, but they are unable to recognize the lawmaker. From Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam and Bhagavad Gita, we can know who the lawmaker is. The lawmaker is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is said here that the planets do not sink. Since they are floating under the order of or energy of the Supreme Godhead, they do not fall down into the water, which covers half of the universe. All the planets are heavy, with their various mountains, seas, oceans, cities, palaces, and buildings, and yet they are floating. It is understood from this passage that all the other planets. It is understood from this passage that all the other planets that are floating in the air have oceans and mountains similar to those on this planet. Nabodhati Shvasatam Pradanyanyamadha Lokang Sadehang Tanute Mahan Sapta Viravritam. Subject to the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sky allows outer space to accommodate all the various planets, which hold innumerable living entities. The total universal body expands with its 7 coverings under his supreme control. Purport. It is understood from this verse that all the planets in outer space are floating, and they all hold living entities. The word Shvasadam means those who breathe, or the living entities. In order to accommodate them, there are innumerable planets. Every planet is a residence for innumerable living entities, and the necessary space is provided in the sky by the supreme order of the Lord. It is also stated here that the total universal body is increasing. It is covered by 7 layers, and as there are 5 elements within the universe, so the total elements and layers cover the outside of the universal body. The first layer is of earth, and it is 10 times greater in size than the space within the universe. Whoa, that's huge. The second layer is water, and that is 10 times greater than the earthly layer. The third covering is fire, which is 10 times greater than the water covering. And in this way, each layer is 10 times greater than the previous one. That's huge. Okay. Kuna bhimanino deva sargabdishvasyadhyadbhayat vartante no yugam yesham vasha etacharacharam. Out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the directing demigods in charge of the modes of material nature carry out the functions of creation, maintenance, and destruction. Everything animate and inanimate within this material world is under their control. Purport. The three modes of material nature, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance, are under the control of three deities, Brahma, Vishnu, and Lord Shiva. Lord Vishnu is in charge of the mode of goodness, Lord Brahma is in charge of the mode of passion, and Lord Shiva is in charge of the mode of ignorance. Similarly, there are many other demigods in charge of the air department, the water department, the cloud department, etc. Just as the government has many different departments, so within this material world, the government of the Supreme Lord has many departments, and all these departments function in proper order out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Demigods are undoubtedly controlling all matter, animate and inanimate, within the universe. But above them, the Supreme Controller is the Personality of Godhead. Therefore, in the Brahma Samhita it is said, Ishvara Parama Krishna. Undoubtedly, there are many controllers in the departmental management of this universe, but the Supreme Controller is Krishna. There are two kinds of dissolutions. One kind of dissolution takes place when Brahma goes to sleep during his night, and the final dissolution takes place when Brahma dies. As long as Brahma does not die, creation, maintenance, and destruction are actuated by different demigods under the superintendence of the Supreme Lord. Sonanto God, I have a hard time doing these ones. Sonantanta karakalo nadiradi kridavyaya janam janena janayan marayan mrityunantakam. The eternal time factor has no beginning and no end. It is the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the maker of the criminal world. It brings about the end of the phenomenal world, and it carries on the work of creation by bringing one individual into existence from another, and likewise it dissolves the universe by destroying even the Lord of Death, Yamaraj. Purport. By the influence of eternal time, which is a representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Father begets a son, and the Father dies by the influence of cruel death. But by time's influence, even the Lord of cruel death is killed. In other words, all the demigods within the material world are temporary, like ourselves. Our lives last for 100 years at the most, and similarly, although their lives may last for millions and billions of years, the demigods are not eternal. No one can live within this material world eternally. The phenomenal world is created, maintained, and destroyed by the finger signal of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, a devotee does not desire anything in this material world. A devotee desires only to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This servitude exists eternally. The Lord exists eternally. His servitor exists eternally, and the service exists eternally. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 3rd canto, 29th chapter of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, entitled Explanation of Devotional Service by Lord Kapila. And it is now 7:53, so we're ending a little early today. Let's just see what we're going to do tomorrow. I know, I like that. The finger signal of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thanks for giving all these notes for Jumnabu. It's helpful to, then I can remember. Okay. Servitude eternally. Okay, I'm just seeing what is, I should stop sharing my screen. Tomorrow we are going to read about, what is it? Chapter 30. Description by Lord Kapila of adverse fruitive activities. The life and death of the two main topics is the life and death of a materialist and his post-death experience. So that's the next chapter, 30 verses. No, 34 verses. Okay, I'll do a little kirtan now since we have a bit of time. We're close to the end of the third canto. Alright. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Sorry, it's too high. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Jai Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari, Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Ju ki Jai, Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju ki Jai, Nitya Rupa Vishnu, Om Vishnupad Ashtara Shata Shishimad Srila Bhakti Narayan Goswami Maharaj Srila Gurudev ki Jai, Nitya Rupa Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtara Shata Shishimad Srila Bhakti Vedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj ki Jai, Nitya Rupa Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtara Shata Shishimad Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Nitya Rupa Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtara Shata Shishimad Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj ki Jai, Nitya Rupa Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtara Shata Shishimad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki Jai, Nitil Vishnu Mahabhagavat Srila Gokisharas Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nitil Vishnu Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Nitil Vishnu Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Patadash Raghunath Shara Gosai Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda ki jai. नाम आचार्य श्रील हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल व्रज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदात गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री आरकुंड श्याम कुंड की जय। श्री मुन देवी गंगा देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी योगमाया की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। श्री विजय अकादशी तिथि की जय। तिथि पालन करी भक्त वृंद की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशवाश्च कृष्ण भक्ति प्रददेवी सत्यवताय नमो नमः। वंशा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। धन्यवाद प्रणाम। जय श्री गुरुदेव जय श्री प्रभुपाद। हरि बोल। See you all tomorrow. हरि बोल प्रद्युम्न प्रभु।